Now, our local interest story this week, I mean, here's one that, I tell you, this is a nightmare. A lot of folks around here live on a fixed income. Mm-hmm. And, as you age, sometimes you've got to go out of town and deal with your parents' estate or something like that. I mean, this is what happens to you as you get older.
Where we're going with this story, I just want to say, when I had my baby, things get swept under the rug.
Yeah.
When you go through any sort of medical crisis situation, whether it's you personally or a family member, things do get a little out of control when it comes to home maintenance. It happens.
Yeah, right. And, that's the thing. Okay, so you let your grass get a little bit out of hand. You would think, Pat George, your neighbors, they may be just a little bit upset with you. Who's the jerk that never mows his lawn?
Well, it's funny you say that, because I stopped my lawn care guy because he was cutting it so short. My grass wasn't growing fast enough, so my grass is a little high right now.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to get ahead of the game.
You better watch out, buddy, because, let me tell you what can happen to you. If you're a guy like this guy, Jim Ficken over in Dunedin, his mom passed away, and he had to go up to South Carolina for a couple of months to deal with her estate. And, that can involve a lot of things. It can involve selling off, a bunch of personal assets that existed in the home. A lot of times you got to sell the home. There's, other things. And, of course, regular people don't have the luxury of just hanging on to everything and, until they can deal with it. A lot of regular people, because there are carrying costs every month on a home. You've got to pay a mortgage potentially, or you've got to pay your portion of taxes, etc. So anyway, he had to go up there and deal with this. Well, when he got home, what he found is that while he was gone and his grass got over 10 inches, which admittedly, 10 inches is getting up there, right? That's about almost a foot.
It was July. We're getting all those storms then. Yeah. Lots of water.
But in his defense, the guy he had hired to cut his lawn stopped without him knowing it.
So this is another extra layer. He's got to go out of town. Mm-hmm. The person he had commissioned to do it all of a sudden comes to a halt. He has no idea that this happened. He doesn't
know what's going on. And I guess he didn't have, close enough contact with his neighbors to say, hey, your lawn guy hadn't come by. Well, in the meantime, the city of Dunedin says, oh, look at that. Look at that opportunity that we've got there potentially. Or at least this is the way our friends at the Institute of Justice want to spin it.
Let me back up a step. You know what happened to his lawn guy, right? He died.
Oh, there you go.
So there's another excuse for not having...
The lawn guy passed away.
Unexpectedly.
And, how was he to know? How was he to know? He was out of town. So the problem is that these cities, when you violate one of their municipal codes, they can hit you with a pretty hefty fine. And in the case of Mr. Ficken, it was $500 a day. So over a period of a couple months, that added up to $30,000.
What do you think the chances are of that city getting that money?
At this point, I think they're going down dramatically. I think that they've squeezed a lot of people probably throughout the years. This is a new trend in local governments in terms of actually squeezing and enforcing these things. We've seen it a little bit over in Tampa, although I have to say my experience in Tampa has been very positive with the group. I've gone in. I had a client who had a significant number of fines that had added up on his property without him having full knowledge of it. And we were able to kind of throw ourselves at the feet of the magistrate and get that dealt with in Tampa. And of course, this is all public record because those magistrate hearings are technically all public record. But anyway, we were able to get them to deal with it just basically going in and telling the story. You would assume that maybe in Tampa, if Mr. Ficken could come in and tell his story, they would drop the fines. But apparently in Dunedin, they have a little bit of a different view on it. And frankly, those of us that have lived here a long time, you pick up on the fact that there's different enforcement of codes and things, particularly by local governments in Pinellas County as opposed to Hillsborough.
You said it's a trend now with cities going after people for this kind of stuff. Is this like a way to just generate income for the city, like traffic citations?
Yeah, generate income and potentially, think what would happen if he doesn't pay the $30,000. Then the other option is they want to foreclose the home, to sell the home at auction, to repay their lien, and whatever balance of money that he might have in his home would then go, he would receive that. Of course, there would be a lot of additional costs, attorney fees, all kinds of property charges that would have to be taken out of that money because of the sale. And so I don't think he would receive quite, nearly what he would receive if he sold it on his own. But nevertheless, even in theory, would get something back. But you got to think about this. For this guy, like a lot of people on a fixed income, he said this is $30,000 is 5 to 6 years of living expenses for him. How can you, they want to take us home. But Point is, the Institute for Justice has taken his case, and we've covered them on our program before. The Institute for Justice, they've got an office in the state of Florida. It's based out of Miami, and Florida is one of the states that this group has targeted for their work. Now, what is their work? Their work is lawsuits in favor of individuals and freedom and against government overreach, encroachment, wrongful takings, like what this is, the attempt to take somebody's property, or through civil forfeiture, which is very common, with police departments taking property and things like that. So they're essentially fighting the frontline battle against this. They're what you call a public interest law firm. They're a not-for-profit, but they are pursuing. They have a budget, obviously. They take donations largely, and people fund this law firm, and they're pursuing, freedom and justice for people like Jim Ficken, who can't, frankly, afford a lawyer to take up his cause. So now they brought some of the best lawyers in the whole country on these issues, and they brought them to bear right here in Dunedin, Florida. And I think it's going to be interesting. I mean, I've got to imagine that the city of Dunedin is going to probably want to carefully walk away from this issue, because now the big dogs have been called out. But isn't
not
it
good
kind
for PR either?
Yeah, but hold on. How many Jim Fickens are there out there? How many people who haven't had the opportunity to get the Institute for Justice to come in and stand up for them? How many people just caved and paid some portion of the fines?
What would have been wrong with the city charging them $500, cutting the grass, and moving on?
Oh, there you go, Pat George. How about fix the problem? It's such a big deal. Right. Why don't you bring out the weed whacker? I mean, they got people on staff who clean up properties, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, would that be the easy fix? Well, it might be the easy fix, but then you don't get the guy's property, and you don't get to take it, and you don't get to put $30,000 into the city's coffers. And that's exactly why Institute for Justice got involved in this.
Thank you for listening to the Morgan Streetman Show. We hope you enjoyed what you heard, and if you did, please click like and subscribe to help us out. And remember that we recommend that you exercise your brain at least once a week.